Good morning, Dave here. Don't mind the mess in my background. Today I'm going to show you guys from one noob to another how I rebuild my Protank 2 heads. I'm going to start today with a head that's already used, but it could be new, it doesn't matter. In fact, when I buy these brand new, the first thing I do is take them apart and put my own coil in there, because as I've come to learn, stock heads are junk. Bad flavor. I won't say bad, but just once you've experienced better, you'll find it's woefully insufficient. Some of the tools we're going to use today: 1/16 inch drill bit, good pair of tweezers. These were inexpensive, but they were the more expensive of the cheap ones just because they've been ground and they have a nice point and they actually have a flat grip, so that's useful for many things. Pair of nail clippers. You can use any needle nose pliers or scissors, but I'm going to use my trusty Leatherman needle nose. And scissors I meant, not pliers, but I'm going to be using this pick hook. Got a 10 times jeweler's loop. This comes in really handy for inspecting your coils. And I'm going to be using some 30 gauge Kanthal today. Well, first thing I'm going to do real quick is just break the old base down, get it ready for rebuild. And we do that by soak up some of this juice in there by pulling out that center pin. Insulator came with it. Let's pop the chimney off there. And ooh, come back here. We're just gonna push the old coil out. This one doesn't want to come today. I like to save my coils, I don't know why. I guess I'm just nostalgic or something, but this one's not coming. So to save time, I'm just going to pull that bastard out of there. And now we have an empty base to work with. I'll put all those parts aside. First thing we're going to do is get some Kanthal wire ready. I'm going to use about 6 inches. I know a lot of people, if you watch videos on YouTube, they'll say like 8 inches or so, but once you get the hang of it, you're going to end up wasting a lot of that. So I'd say that's probably quite enough there. Let's clip that off. I need some more. And yeah, let's straighten this out a bit. First thing we're going to want to do is put a loop on one end for our hook pick. And got a loop started, but I'm just going to pinch the twist with my wire, or with my needle nose, and just twist that a little tighter because we don't want that to come apart while we're winding. And I'll show you why, because I forgot to show you an important tool. Now, a lot of guys are really good at hand winding these, but I'm not. So I'm going to show you how to do it with a drill. So we got the loop in our wire. The next step is on the end. We need to put a little 90-degree bend in it. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to take my drill bit, put it into the chuck with the cutting edge in. And I'm going to sit my wire right on top of that, making sure it's going to get clamped into one of these grooves on the chuck fingers while it's sitting flush with the mandrel. I should say bit, but we're using it as a mandrel. Let me just cinch that down good. We don't want it to slip. Okay, so why the loop? I'm gonna hook into that there, and don't pull it too tight because it's not going to grip the wire very well in here at first. We're going to count on the tension after the first few winds to be able to keep this nice and taut. So I'm just going to slowly, let's go the other way, slowly start the first wind. Slide that back all the way. Now their first few winds are going to end up unusable, most likely. So I always overwind so I can pulse those first few coils out. So let's do this. Ooh, there goes the VTR. Hold on. She's okay. Come on, there we go. And I'm just going to slowly start the first couple coils, and once I have those going, we're going to hold the hook a little bit back, not so far that the coils will overlap, but enough to keep them winding nice and tight next to each other. And we're just going to go really slow. Just 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now I'm aiming for a 12 wrap coil. So like I said, we're going to unwind the first few, so I'm going to go about 14, 15. (13), 14, 15. Okay, so there we go. Just pinch that on the bottom a little bit, keep it nice and tight. And let's get the hook out of there. Let's try this out. Very nice. As you can see, it's friggin' beautiful. So let me just verify that I do in fact have 15 wraps here. I do. So we're going to pull 3 of those out, and the way we're going to do that is by grabbing the lead that was in the chuck, pull it down, and just slowly unwind. So there's 14, 13, and by pulling it straight down like this, you're not messing up the coils at all. You're unwinding it with tension. 12. So what you end up with is a nice, perfect microcoil. I'm going to straighten up these leads just gently, just a little bit. It doesn't matter if they're a little springy and splayed apart like that. Once it's in the head, it'll hold it all nice. And clip off the lead from the chuck end, right where all the kinks are from where it was bent. See, it's nice and straight out now. And we'll do the same with the hook end. Now, it's not recommended to fire these in the head to start the oxidation process, because people tend to burn their insulators and end up with rubbish. But I find that if you pulse it really slowly, that you can glow the coil in the head without melting the insulator. You just got to be patient, take your time. Oh, so I put the coil back on the bit. We're going to use that for support. Pinch the leads so they're parallel. And we're going to insert them into the head. Like so. Do this trick again. Now, it's very imperative to keep the coil properly placed in there. So what I'm going to do is with 2 fingers, I'm going to put pressure there, and with my other thumb and middle finger, I'm going to support the base so I can apply pressure and keep that bit flush against the bottom. Now I'm going to take my tools here and just, that lead's going to go that way, this lead's going to go this way. You take your insulator with the shallow end in, the thick end should be at the base, and we want to go through one of those leads, sandwiching the other lead against the base, and that's the ground. And getting this in there is probably the hardest part, but that one went pretty easy, so thankfully, for the sake of this video, you don't have to see me fiddle with that too long. I'm just going to take my hook and very gently just make sure the insulator is fully inserted. Don't go too far and hit the coil because you might damage it. And now we'll take the center pin, making sure that the 2 legs are staying apart. Staying opposite of each other is what I meant. And oops, I'm just going to do this off camera real quick, but I'll show you the end result. There. Okay. So as you can see, there's our ground. It's sandwiched between the insulator and the base. And there's our positive sandwiched between the post and the base, or excuse me, the post and the insulator. When you clip these, it's very important, I found, to make sure that especially the ground is flush with the bottom of the base, because if it's sticking up, when it heats up, it'll end up poking through that insulator and causing a short, and I'm speaking from experience there. So now that it's fully supported by the post, we'll go ahead and pull that drill bit out of there. Clip ground flush. Clip the positive flush. That's what you want it to look like. See, there's the ground where it's laying flat. That's not poking through anything. That's good. And there she is. Beauty. It's not quite centered, so I'm gently going to take my pick hook and just pull the coil very carefully towards the center of the head. Nice. Okay, so the hard part's done. Let's take my poor VTR here. Is she okay? I'm sorry, baby. Nice little scratch in the front after that fall. It's just my luck. Need to get a wrap for this thing. And just for experimenting, making sure the coil's good, this is where this base comes in. Obviously you don't need the VTR tube if you have a mod, or you can just screw the base on easily. And I'm just going to use the chimney. I'm not going to push it down all the way, but I'm just going to use it enough so I can twist that head into position. Make sure it's making contact. And let's see what we got here. 2.1 ohms. I'm not going to fire it at 15 watts. Let's go down to like, I'm going to go 7 watts. Just because it doesn't take much power to glow a dry coil. We don't want to melt that insulator. So we're going to pulse it slowly. That's oil residue right there. Yep, smells of keratin, not rubber. Oh, there we go. We're getting some life. And here's where your tweezers come in. Very carefully, and make sure you have ones with a good fine point. Very carefully get that coil glowing. And while it's still red, you want to pinch them together. There we go. One shot and it's already perfect, glowing inside out. That's it. I'm not going to fire it anymore just to avoid damaging my insulators. I'm going to give it a sniff test too. No rubber. Perfect. Hard part is over. I'm going to take that head out of the base now. Let's move some of these tools aside that we're not going to use at this point. And I'm going to take cotton. Now, this is what I recommend personally because I started with something like this, cosmetics grade, but even though it says it's pure, it's not. You get a bad flavor from it for the first few puffs, and it's really not pleasant. And I found that this medical grade cotton balls leave no taste initially. It's probably not bleached, so that's good. So that's what I would recommend using. And it was cheap. I think that box was like $2 or $3. And the cotton balls unroll into a nice little cotton sheet here. So I'm just gonna, this is something that's hard to describe. You're gonna have to learn just from experience, but I'm gonna take enough to roll the primary wick. When you do this, you don't want to twist. You just want to compress it, because if you twist it, you're not going to get good juice flow. And then you're going to end up with burnt hits, and you're going to say, Dave, you lied to me. Why'd you lie? I didn't mean to. So I'm just rolling it between my fingers, not twisting. think I'm going to actually use the end more over here because it's a little bit thicker. I want it to fill that coil nice. And on the end though, you do want to twist because we're not going to use that part, and that'll make it easier to get through the coil. So let's cut off a little bit of that tail. We have a nice fine point. And I'm going to feed that right through the coil. Oh, you know what? You know how I said I liked that spot because it was thicker? Well, it's too thick. So you don't want to force the cotton through the coil because you'll end up deforming them and create a pinch point, and the juice won't flow very well, and it's not good. So I am going to use this portion instead. It's pretty thin right there, so let's cut it. There we go. Again, I'm rolling it, not twisting it, but the end I will twist. Clip off the little bit of tail. We want a nice point. We don't want any straggly little cotton strands because they'll catch the coil and ruin your day. And there we go. Let's pull that through. Okay, so for the bottom primary wick, I will cut that flush with the base just by getting my scissor blades right there, and you know what, those scissors are worn out. I've cut wire with them too many times. I'm going to use these instead. So we're going to cut that flush with the base, and then do the same for the other side. Now I'm going to go back to that thicker strand I made, and we're going to put that on top. And I have found my tanks, my pro tanks, never gurgle, never leak. I vape them all the way down to nothing, and I think this is the reason why they work so well for me. I'm going to cut this flavor wick about twice as long as the tail on the primary wick, and I'll show you why when we put it in the tank. So there's one side. And there's the other. So that's what we're going to end up with. Now I'm going to put that in my pro tank that already has some waffle in it. But you really want to make sure you pre-soak and make sure all the wick is saturated. Okay, let's go to my pro tank now. I'm going to pull the drip tip off so I can set the tank upside down. Pull out my arrow base. Let's take out the head that's in there. Now this one I just built earlier today. For the sake of the video though, I am rebuilding the one that it replaced, just so I can show you guys how I do it. But before we put that in, let's get the chimney back on. When I do this, I push the rubber grommet up a little bit because I don't want it to get pinched and ruin anything. So push the grommet up, snap the chimney back in place, inspect it, make sure it's flush, and then push that cat back down over the wicks, and it's good to go. So here's where the long tails come in. I'm going to screw that bad boy in there, nice and tight. Yeah. And here's why we have those long flavor wicks. I'm going to take my hook pick and I'm going to spread out those tails so I have a nice fluffy puff. And then I'm going to push all that down into the little cup at the base. Like so. This is what it looks like before you do that. So we fluff that up and then we stuff it down into the cup. You don't want to pack it down in there, just sit it down in there. Again, I'm going to fluff up that tail until I can easily just push it down into the cup. And now there is no more tails. And if you fluff them out good, they go almost all the way around the cup, so you get really good wicking like that. Now, still got some juice in there. I don't know why I said I never get leaks or gurgles, and that's true, I don't, except for when I first put these things back together. There's always a little bit of juice that gets somewhere, and it will gurgle for the first few minutes of vaping this thing. So, get that nice and tight. Let's put the drip tip on. There we go. Let's see how she vapes. My poor VTR. I wonder if I can polish this without wiping off the laser etchings. In my opinion, it's really a great device for a Chinese thing. I like it a lot. 2.5 ohms after it's been fully prepped, which is about what I expected. And we're gonna go 7 watts, just won't do. Let's go to 13. 13 watts. First puff. No cotton flavor, all waffle. Good stuff. Let's crank her up. So that's it. That's good. This thing's going to run now for a long time. The coils last a long time. I find, since I like to use such a high power, that I might have to change the cotton every few days, but those coils will last you a long time and they just perform very well. So if you're looking for good ways to rebuild your Protank heads, that's what I recommend. Hope you found this informative. Have a great day.